With the latest refinements in NVIDIA drivers, game updates, and SteamVR beta's new locked frame rate settings, I decided to take another look at Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. Let's see if we can get reasonable performance out of this mother now.
Immersed Robot.
Starting out with default graphical settings for VR, I decided to set the refresh rate in my index to 80 Hz and use the throttling behavior in SteamVR, which I covered in my previous video, to lock frame rate at 40 FPS. The game will then use the standard combination of reprojection and motion smoothing to give as smooth an experience as possible. Over the notoriously demanding area of Manhattan, I found I was able to maintain a relatively comfortable and solid frame rate, with occasional dips in places. But in comparison to my last video, this was a vast improvement in terms of playability. As you can see from FPS VR, my GPU appears to be utilized quite well with this setting, running in the 90s in terms of total usage. Wanting to see the difference, I dropped my frame limit to 26.7 FPS in SteamVR to see how the software trickery would deal with this to maintain such a smooth performance. After dropping it down, you can clearly see that the frame timings are similar, or even a little higher than before, with my GPU only being utilized at the 65 to 75% mark. I placed the frame rate lock back up to 40% and tried the additional prediction setting in SteamVR. This setting gives extra liberty to the motion smoothing aspect of SteamVR, and although reducing stutter, can introduce distracting warping artifacts. I found this to be the case, and the compass in the top center of the screen was warping in a very distracting way, so I decided to reduce this setting back down to default. The game felt great to play with these settings, although I will say that overall resolution still felt a little low for me to be comfortably immersed. Others might feel differently regarding this, and it can be a subjective area to get into. I selected a more remote area and found perceptible performance was very similar, although GPU usage and frame timings seemed slightly better. I upped the refresh rate of the index to 90, settling on a locked 45 FPS with comfortable results. .120 Hz at a locked 60 FPS was unfortunately unachievable, so I went back to 90. Occasional stutters and spikes were noticeable, and as I reduced altitude the problem became much worse. I landed on a field, and as you can see performance tanked initially, before settling back to a more solid 45 FPS. When taking off, performance dropped again until I had gained enough altitude, and then, as before, I found myself playing an extremely comfortable experience. I felt switching to 80 Hz with a locked 40 FPS still gave me the best overall performance for my current settings and system. Another notoriously demanding area is Tokyo. I felt that this ran in a similar way to Manhattan for the most part, and it felt great. The motion smoothing artifacts of using the locked frames in SteamVR can be distracting, but are an unfortunate side effect, and one which I personally found acceptable to maintain a relatively smooth gameplay experience. As I reduced altitude to the height of the taller buildings, performance once again dropped. This wasn't a particularly pleasant ride at this point, so I dropped the locked frames down to 26.7. This certainly helped and the game was playable again, although you can see my frame timings are very much borderline here. Ascending again and things became much better as expected, so I moved back up to 40 FPS locked. Overall, I can't pin down if the latest NVIDIA drivers, game updates, or SteamVR locked frame rates are helping me out the most, but I'm inclined to say the new SteamVR features are of obvious benefit in this game. It's a far more enjoyable experience now than the first time I played on the launch day of the VR mode. One final comment is that, while recording this footage in OBS, I reduced my in-game super sampling to 80% to fall in line with default settings. While not having the extra demand of recording, I found I was able to push in-game super sampling up to 100% with very similar performance. Another quick point is to say that I haven't done any in-depth analysis of how much impact having FPS VR running while playing the game has on overall performance, so this is something else to keep in mind. I'm not giving up on this game, and I do feel like I'm dialing in my experience a little more each time I play. In some ways the game is incredible, but there is still plenty of room to make it a definitive VR experience, and I can't wait to see future updates. Well, that's pretty much it for this video. Please hesitantly tap the like button and don't forget to subscribe for more concise and informative VR content. You can also join our Discord by clicking on the link in the description of this video. And, as always, I'll catch you on the flippity flip.